time.
A sense of belonging in a company actually increases job performance by 56%.
It's like a lot of times all of that 3D data is there. They've done the work, they've done the engineering, they've done the slopes, they've done all the 3D polylines are already in their file. There's just a huge disconnect between what they do and the builders right now.
113,000 available unfilled construction jobs in this country, 11 million available unfilled jobs overall in this country.
One of the great culture things I see in construction is people just get it done. At the end of the day, we've built 100% of the building. There's no 80-20 rule.
Think of the technology that has been brought into existence in the last 60 years, and you think of the productivity gains that have, say, occurred in agriculture, which is up 1,750%, or manufacturing, which is up 400%, and construction is flat to negative.
This was always supposed to just be a 6-episode mini-series, Stacey. I want to remind you of that.
Good morning. It's morning huddle time. Stacey Holzinger and Chad Prinky back as usual to bring. I guess Stacey, is this season 4, 5? My God, we're on a 5th season of this thing.
Yep, 51st episode. So
let's go. All right.
So what have you been up to during our break here? I haven't really got a chance to talk to you.
So that's true. we talked like 2 weeks ago, like, hey, are we ready for this huddle thing?
Yeah.
So what have I been up to? Stacey, I have been probably number one. I've been working a lot. And I've, as you know, my business is about the same age as yours, maybe a few months older or something like that. But, here we're in our we're coming up on our 3rd year anniversary, 2.5 years in, and we're up to 5 employees. Just hired somebody. Just started yesterday. Somebody that I've developed a relationship with over the past year, 2 years almost. Been an active huddle viewer and participant even in the past. His name's Matt Verderamo. And so he joins our growing team. And I guess on top of that, I did fit in a really fun family vacation this summer where we went to New England for the first time. I had never been to the Northeast. So
nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How about you, Stacey? What have you been up to since the break?
Personally, just any outdoor activity you can possibly think of: fishing, boating, kayaking. I got a new sup board, so I've been using that. And then yesterday I was at Thomas Edison School of Technology with Camp NAWIC, so National Women in Construction. This is their 2nd year. NAWIC has national chapters, but this is DC's 2nd year where they're running this Free Girls Construction Camp. So Coakley Williams came yesterday, did a bid tour or demonstration. Then we had a tool demonstration, and I helped the girls make picnic tables. And I'll be back there on Thursday. I know they need volunteers, so if anyone's in the DMV area, that would be awesome if you could come help us out. But the parents were just super impressed. Love talking to them. They, the whole thing's free for these kids, and their turnout this year, they had 85 girls register. And they actually had to turn some of these girls away just because we weren't expecting that big of a turnout. So we have 35 that are participating. So it's going to be a fun week. And I think Jennifer Sproul in Baltimore area is also running their Camp NAWIC, because I've been seeing pictures and stuff. So it's a great program.
It sounds like it. I every time I hear about the types of ideas that NAWIC is running down, I'm impressed with the engagement, that they really have, I think, on following through with their mission. So awesome.
Yeah.
So Stacey, you and I got some feedback from a friend and audience member this past off season, if you will, and he said to me, he said, Chad, I think a lot of people who watch and listen to the huddle think that the huddle is your and Stacey's full-time job. And right. And I was like, oh wow, that's a good. So I thought it might. What he thought, and I happen to agree that it might make sense to take 30 seconds each, if you will, and kind of describe to the audience who we are and what we do, so that they have a little bit of background. And I know you hate being put on the spot, so I'll go first and give you 30 seconds to get your. I know you're expecting it ish, right? But it never changes the fact that when it shows up, it's scary. So I'm the founder of Well Built Construction Consulting. We are a team of people dedicated to helping to build better project teams and better construction companies through driving positive change. We build and execute strategic business plans that help companies to go from where they are to where they're trying to go. We help with a host of skill development and process development and leadership development, and things like that along the way that help the organizations to achieve their goals. And we also help project teams with team building, and collaboration to create overall healthier environments to reduce stress, create better project outcomes, and I think overall make the construction industry a better place to work. So that's what we do. As I mentioned before, we're a team of 6 people and growing, and that is our business. Stacy, what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I own Steel Toe Communications and I'm a marketing consultant. So I work from anywhere from startup contractors getting their business off the ground, to my niche is 100 employees or less, but I definitely work with, larger companies. I help them with various marketing activities. So if you don't have the means to hire a full-time marketing professional, but you need help with photography, your website, brochures for an upcoming expo, social media management, applying for awards or the STEP award for safety, any of those activities that may be one-offs that you just need some assistance with because your time and resources are limited. That's what I help contractors with, and commercial contractors usually.
Awesome. All right. And we will go about reminding people of that periodically so that we don't have people wondering as they have been. So let's shift gears. We've got Nitin with us. Nitin is joining us. Nitin Govila, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
He's
Thank you.
joining us today from Singapore. So this morning, when we first jumped on, I said good morning. He was like, "Yeah, good night." I'm like, all right. It's Nitin is getting ready for the end of his day, just as we get rolling at the start of ours. But you know what? In this world, we're all people are listening and watching at their own pace anyway. So it could be any time of day. But thank you so much for joining us. Nitin is joining us from a company called Serge Ferrari, and he is the head of sales and marketing for that organization that does textile manufacturing, and they're in the construction space, pulling their materials into all kinds of construction products. And Nitin's joining us to talk about some of the advancements in construction product technology, from a sustainability and cost effectiveness standpoint. And so I'm looking forward to getting some education on that front. But before we do, Nitin, if you would just give us a little bit of context on you, a little bit about your story, your background, for our audience.
So first of all, thank you, Chad, and thank you, Stacy, for having me over. I was looking forward to it. I mean, it's an interesting type of conversation you have, and in fact, I'm not surprised, as you said, that people think that's a full-time job because the kind of energy you people put into that. I'm sure everybody can feel that, that there's a lot of effort going on, and they feel that obviously at the back end there's some good amount of work which is going on. So I work for a French company called Serge Ferrari, as you rightly said. I've been working for them for 7 years. It's a French company headquartered very close to Lyon, a very small town, very close to Lyon, the second largest city in France. It is a world leader in composite materials. So when we say composite materials in a layman language, I can say it's technical fabrics. both for interior and exterior applications. So I have two hats actually. I manage on the business side one part of the world which covers Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. So everything related to business, P&L management, all decisions related to those part of the world. And on the other side, we out of the four strategic markets, I manage two globally on sales and marketing, the two strategic markets out of the four. So that's my role. I've been based in Singapore for the last 15 years. So it's always been my forte related to the region, working with building material companies. And just quickly, I mean, you mentioned about applications. So obviously we'll talk about that. So um, the fact that we have both products for interior and exterior, so that means we are the only company which is transversal in terms of multiple applications. And obviously we'll talk about that later. But in a quick way, a fabric, technical fabric could be a blind in your house, could be an awning in your patio, could be a car park shade close by, could be even a mall with a white color conical roof, or could be a big stadium or an airport, which you see that. So just to set the context so that people can understand what it means when we talk about technical fabrics, or could be a event tent for a marriage or for a conference or even a match which is going on, outside tents which are being put up. So that's the kind of fabric here we are talking about.
Okay, got it. So, and the term that you've used is technical textiles. Is that right?
Yes, yes,
Which is
yes, yes.
fun to say. I'll notably fun to say technical textiles. Um, and and so we've got some of, I guess, in my mind, the more traditional applications. When I think about textile usage in construction applications, what you're talking about, large tents, things like that. Yeah, okay, I understand that. That's quasi temporary structures that we're
Yeah.
putting up for events and things like that. But are we actually seeing the integration of technical textiles into more traditional construction, heavier construction materials? Are you seeing that integration? And if you would kind of describe how that works.
Yes, in fact, the answer is yes. And it's not only recent, it's been happening for many years. Obviously, it depends on the maturity of the country and their awareness about it. So, I always say a certain country comes on the world map with a certain iconic structure. It's like the postcard of that country. So, either most of the times, either it's an airport or an iconic building or sometimes a stadium. Now, more and more, if you see the last many World Cups or Olympics or local games, you see those stadiums which have been built with colored fabrics, with either the roof done with different fabrics, transparent ones, and translucent white color ones. So those obviously have been understood to be a permanent structure because nobody builds a stadium for 2 years replacement or 5 years replacement. They are looking at a time frame of 15, 20, 25, 30 years. The structure which you see behind as a background of my image, it's actually a world's largest meditation hall, which was built just 3 years back in India with a capacity to sit nearly 100,000 people. So it's also a permanent structure, which is specific domes, but inside it's an acoustic fabric, and it's just an open structure. There's no pillars in between, just an open area where you can sit and meditate together. And there are many more iconic structures. One comes to, I mean, if you remember the recent World Cup in Qatar, seven stadiums, I mean, 5 out of 7 have been done by membranes. And actually, I'm proud to say they've been done by our company's fabrics. And one actually was in the shape of a Bedouin tent, like a Middle East tent, both outside, inside. So the whole stadium was done with fabrics with a capacity of 80,000 seating capacity. So it has been there for sure. It's the maturity of a country or a market. Recently in China, in the last 2 years, we've done nearly 7 stadiums. In India, we do 2 or 3 stadiums every year anyway. So it's also sometimes more in developing or the upcoming economies, whereas in US, maybe it depends, okay, how many stadiums are built depending on an event or not, or how many are getting renovated. So it depends. You may not hear sometimes in certain countries because there are not so many structures to do, like Paris Olympics, which is happening next year. The whole context of them winning the Olympics was that they will use the existing ones, because of the environment or sustainability. They don't want to build some new ones. They want to use the existing ones. So in that sense, obviously, some new structures will not come. But definitely, this fabric has been treated as the fifth element, and gets classified into a permanent um, structure element. Obviously, the technical aspect of it varies depending on the type of structure you have to make, and that's where knowledge of software, knowledge of the technicality of it, how you design, how you fulfill the building parameters, the wind loads, the rain loads, all the safety elements you put in. So all that comes as a technical element of it when you're doing structures like this. On the other side, when you're making a furniture or a blind, it's a very simple thing. There's not too much technicality in that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, what are what's the status quo?
Yeah.
Clearly this, as you say, this has been happening, and as you start to describe, and maybe it's just the part, your own expertise in the part of the world that you're operating, but it seems to me that maybe this has broader applications recently, um, in maybe in the Middle East, maybe in um, Asia, the places that in India, well, which is Asia, right? But but so when we think about uh, maybe the status quo in Europe or in North America, uh, what are people doing instead of technical textiles?
It's a good question. So I would answer in this way, like as I said, because structures in US and Europe have been built in the past. So normally, in fact, every year we will see actually a big structure or two getting replaced because it's reaching its end of life, right?
Sure.
25 years. Just recently, last year we did a stadium in Germany. One more we are doing this year because they want to replace it. It was 20 years done earlier. So now they feel the time has come to maybe create a new design or replace it again with a fabric. So this happens, and it's happening in US also. Obviously, it all depends on the now when the time comes to replace, then there are many elements, as you know, the local government regulations and other elements come, and they keep on the budgetary factors come whether they want to do or not. So sometimes the element, the advantage of a fabric or a technical fabric is that you can do both. You can do a new one, you can do a replacement one. Now, for sure, classically, who do we compete with? It will be the classical, you're building a stadium with concrete. Maybe you're building a stadium with steel. Maybe you're building a stadium with some other kind of transparent glass, maybe, for example. Those kinds of material, they are always used in stadiums, and they are still sometimes used either for budget reasons, either for some other reasons, because people like a design. But most of the times we see whenever a stadium comes, membrane will be one element people will always consider, because membrane is a free flowing element. You have the flexibility and the element of surprise with an architect or a designer can put in, and each one is looking for their iconic, once in a lifetime defining structure or image, which is always connected to that architect or that architect firm. So, and that flexibility you will never get with any other material. You will always get with membranes. You can even envelop buildings. More and more now, buildings are being enveloped to make a full building, both even on the walls with membranes. And they are not classified as temporary. They are really as permanent structures also. So it's again part of the concept which people do think, but yes, I mean, it's a continuous knowledge which we also have to give to, I mean, the big firms will know. At a smaller level, you have to continuously talk about it, be present in exhibitions, conferences, and do continuous education also with interaction with architects and designers.
What do you find is the biggest hurdle to getting an architect, to getting the design community bought in to choosing this approach as
I
opposed to
think
a more
uh,
traditional approach?
so. I would say awareness definitely, and the thing is that what an architect needs initially is a support mechanism, that when they are in that conceptual phase, is somebody transforming their idea, which is still here, into something which can be depicted on paper. It can be, just a drawing. It could be just an initial idea or different options of ideas. Now, this is where sometimes people feel that they are either lacking support, because obviously we are also limited in the way we operate, in that sense that we are there in every part of the world, but we are not so many, right? As a company and as a business, as you just mentioned at the start. So we have people there. We try to provide that support, but there are many times we may not even know that at the time when the architect had something in his or her mind, were they able to get that support to transform it to an initial concept to a visible idea, and then they start working with a technical company to convert that into understanding what it means, the complexity of it, the cost element of it, the other elements now which are looked at, energy savings, heat, temperature, all those elements which have also become more and more important. You need that support at the very initial stage, because okay, big architect firms have everything. They have different departments,
Right.
so they know what to do. But when you go to the middle tier or the smaller architect firms, that's where the challenge comes, because this kind of support they don't have in house. Now, how organizations are able to provide that support and we go hand in hand from day one with them, I think that's where I would say is the defining factor to grow this market, or the market remains limited going forward.
So the way I'm translating that is to mean that it's very difficult to incorporate into a design that which you don't fully understand yourself, or that which you haven't learned about yet. And so this goes back to your thought process of you gotta be out at conferences, you got to be getting this information in front of people, you got to be educating and creating a level of comfort and confidence so that they will start to incorporate this into their initial vision. And I think that's probably true with every new construction material. It's at some point
Yeah.
people have to become comfortable with it. They have to get comfortable with it and confident enough with it to know what the applications are, and then to be able to incorporate that into their dream.
And it's a very fair point, Chad, because what we see, I was just in a conference of this industry in France a couple of months back. What we see today is that if you see across the world, if you pick up any engineering college across the world, how many even offer tensile architecture as a degree? Forget the degree, even as an elective, or sometimes even as a subject of study. Very few offer that. So, in that sense, we cannot blame anyone if their lack of knowledge is there, because as a stream of knowledge, if somebody is taught at the third year of architecture, or maybe as a course or an elective in your engineering course of civil engineering or industrial engineering or whatever, that's where then you're already open and aware of this concept. So when you move forward, these are the questions you're asking, or you're actively looking for it. So I think part of the problem, or a bigger part of the problem, starts there. Uh, Having said that, now when more and more things have been done over the years, by default, when they're working on big structures, they generally will know. Maybe they'll type in Google to say, okay, different stadiums, maybe different airports, or walkways, or an amphitheater. So when they look for that information, they'll automatically see some structures
Right.
made of membranes. So that's where I would say the search mechanism is helping. But what we are trying to do as a company is then we try to reach out to architecture universities or colleges to start, even sometimes going for a guest lecture, to trying to educate and just tell them, what does tensile architecture mean, what does technical textile or technical fabric means. So this is, I suppose, this is a long drawn process. Obviously it's becoming deeper and deeper, and a lot of people are getting aware of it. But yes, it's a gradual element here. And if I may, I just saw a question that somebody asked whether it's only related to vanity or legacy. I would say that's one part of it. I just mentioned it as an element that sometimes the flexibility the material offers, but then there are many other elements of it. Lightweight, translucency, how do you manage the heat loads? How do you manage the space utilization? Can you do multiple layers of roofing in a, say, a cold country or a hot country, depending on what UV functionality you want, So all those elements also play a very key role. Now we are doing a lot of case studies compared to, say, metal roofing in terms of average CO2 consumption per square meter or per kilogram. And when you do cradle to cradle in terms of end to end analysis, then we are able to show over a lifetime that between, say, a certain structure, if it would have been done with the metal or alternative material, vis-a-vis done with membrane, what's your carbon footprint over a certain period of time? So when you look at all those elements, there are much more than just being a iconic thing, and these are much more advantages also which are brought to the table and put forward, and then we help the final client or the architect with all this data and analysis, which can then they can also feed into their design or expectations of the local area or a country.
That's great. That's great. I have a couple of additional questions, and
Yeah.
amazingly, we're already coming up on time, so I'm going to go kind of quick. But one of the questions is: Are there? We've talked a lot about open air spaces and uses of membrane, and I think briefly you kind of commented on interior applications like
Yes.
blinds and
Yes.
shades and things like that,
Yes.
right? Um, uh, on a day-to-day basis
Yes.
for the majority of construction that's going on around the world, which I would wager to say is not on the scale of a stadium, right?
True.
What are the most exciting products that make an impact on sustainability, on quality, on what are the products that you see emerging that we should be most excited about in our day-to-day kind of construction projects?
So I'll answer this by segmenting it. So if I look on the commercial side of it, whether an office building or a commercial building, for sure, blinds play a very key part. Now, there is an element of interior blinds, but then there's an element of exterior blinds. Now, when you look at from the element of sustainability, energy consumption, once the heat is inside the building, yes, the blind within the office, behind the facade, whether it's glass or concrete, it does help. But if there was an option to have an exterior blind, where even before the heat hitting the concrete or the glass, you can block it and reflect it back. So this is one element which is catching up. Obviously, in Europe, exterior blinds are very key and play a very key part. I think it's not so much yet in US. It's also not so much in certain parts of Asia also. But if you go to Australia, it's a very key element of any house and even to some extent commercial buildings. So that's one element of it. Now in
Nice.
commercial buildings, there is another element what we call is fabric facades or facade mesh. These are mesh material, and they have the capability to block 85% of your thermal element. So the amount of advantage they can bring to a building in energy saving is amazing. Now, what it does is it still does not block the view. You can enhance the aesthetics of the building. You can renovate it without tearing down the building. You can envelop it. You can have three-dimensional shapes. You can print on it. So these are, you can just like you're changing the clothes of a building, if I may say so, in a very simple way. But this is what you can do with facade. So this is a trend which we are really pushing on, and we participate in around 10 to 12 facade conferences across the year. Now, if you go on the residential side, it's mostly blinds, I would say, because more and more people are becoming aware how they manage the energy. And you have now softwares also which connect all the elements of home, including lighting, including sun shading. And this is where having a good fabric which works well with an automation system and can be connected with the home automation controls can play a very key role how you bring in efficiency in your homes also. So these are few things which we now see at least at a smaller level being looked at and being asked for.
So that's great. I mean, I asked what was exciting, and now I'm excited. So that's good stuff. That's really, I got kind of fired up as you were talking about. So follow on question to that, or I guess I
Yes.
don't know, comment slash question. We've talked about what it takes to get architects and engineer to get the design community specifying this product, but really that's one half of or maybe 60% of an equation when it comes to getting this to be successful. There's another half of this equation that really does revolve around, capable qualified contractors to
Yes.
install this
Yes. Yes.
material. And if the architecture, if the design community doesn't have confidence in the ability to install the product, if there is, it's you have to have the people who actually know how to do this. So I guess talk a little bit about the contractors that would do this work. What are their trades? Are they roofing contractors? Are they, like give me the and I'm gonna again focus on the day-to-day material stuff.
True, true.
Let's not talk stadiums for a minute.
So in our
Yeah,
in
talk
our
about
business,
who they
yeah.
are and then how they get good at this. Where do they learn about it?
So in our business, generally the word contractor, we use it a bit differently. The contractors would be the ones who have been given the full charge of the project, and then within that project, they will have different elements to complete. So
So I'm
if
talking about I'm going to talk. It's just to simplify this. Thank you. In this application, I want to assume that it's like the majority of commercial construction or non single family home residential
yes,
construction that happens in the United States, which is performed in the field by the trade contractor, the specialty contractor community. So I'm not talking about the big general contractor right now. I'm talking about the trade
yes.
contractors that are actually going to
So
do this install.
So we call them in our business as either the installer, applicator, or a fabricator. The reason being that, so in fact, that's also very interesting. If you're looking at blinds, you will go to a blind manufacturer or a blind installer. So if you're going to for an awning, you go to a guy who makes the awning. It could be a neighborhood mom and pop store who just cuts the fabric. He has the awning systems and he will come and install at your home. Now, if you're looking, say, for example, a car park shade or even a small facade or a shading, there you need a company which has the technical software, first of all, and they have the capability to cut and weld the fabric and even do this bit of steel work, because when you have those kinds of structures, you need to little bit do a steel work, which is even for a small car park. And then that guy will come and install everything at your place, which could be residential or it could be a smaller level of commercial part. So depending on that, it's done. In furniture, it could be a furniture manufacturer who would come and make the whatever you're looking for, whether a sofa or a chair, and then obviously deliver it to your restaurant or a home or whatever. So depending on the kind of application, the intermediate company which you call as contractors varies in terms of the profile, in terms of the skill set and the technology involved.
Absolutely. Yep. And when it comes to I'll call it, the clothes of the building, that's
Yes.
probably the thing that got that's really stuck in my mind. What trade is most likely to do that work? Is that a yeah? I'll leave it
So
there.
so it's a there it's a technical company which we call as fabricators, because they need to have the software. You have to understand the design load, the wind loads, all those elements which are technical. There's a software which is not so cheap. You need to be trained how to use it. Then you work with that. That software transfers the kind of the cutting pattern and all those things. So you have a cutting table where the fabric will be rolled flat and then you cut based on the design which comes from the software. Then you have a welding machine. And finally, either they will ask an outside company to do steel work or they will do themselves and then come with the fabric to the site. You will install it and then tension it. So
Yep.
whether it's a facade or whatever. So those are technical companies. And actually, your question is very correct. The growth of the market sometimes is limited or growing fast depending how many companies or people enter into this business.
Yep.
Basically, because and generally what we have seen is, which is a strange part in this industry, a lot of people who've been employees of a big company in the past, they kind of go out and create their own company. And this is also the way this channel or this the fabricator or the installer network has grown. But this is very key element. It's not like any roofing material like shingles or a roofing sheet that you just go to a distributor. He just knows a couple of installers who know that even in their sleep they can install a roof because it's so easy. They've been doing for decades and generations.
Right.
So it's not like a classical. The material comes, the fabric comes in rolls. I can give it to anybody and anybody can install. It will never work like that.
Yeah, that's not surprising, but nonetheless, yeah, I can understand it's a potentially limiting factor. You know what, Stacy, Nitin has been answering questions from the audience like as he's rolling through, but I want to he's clearly a pro. But Stacy, what questions do you want to tack on before we?
The only thing that came up while you guys were talking, because you were talking about trying to find like which trade does what, and you were talking about outdoor shading on a building. What is that? I know some glazing contractors, that's some of their role because they hire these steel fabricators, kind of what you were talking about. So that's the only thing I wanted to add, that a glazing contractor could be responsible for the facade of the building.
So the tricky part with membranes is that membranes generally or the fabric facades will never be the first skin. So the glazing guys, whether the glass glazing or the standard facade material like an aluca bond or whatever, that will always be the first skin. So in that sense, those kind of guys, they will not be able to do a fabric facade which is with a certain air gap from the main facade. For that, you need to know what's the load on the building, what kind of framing you have to take, whether steel or aluminum framing, how do you integrate the fabric and how do you design it. So again, the technical element can come. They can help grow the modular facade market, right? I can integrate, say, in a set 2x2 or 3x3 frames, as simple frames, and then they can just install it. Yes, that's in fact, what you touched upon is something which we are trying to do to grow this market, but it's still a long way because the guys who are so happy doing glazing, it's so easy. They can do multiple things. Now, in this case, kind of thing, they still have to be dependent on another intermediate who will integrate the fabric and the frames, and then they get it, and then they find a way to install it or sell it. So there's a lot of elements get added in the chain.
Yeah.
Well, I that makes a lot of sense. That well, first off, I have to say that I promise that glazing is not easy, but I know that's not what you meant. I know that's not. But I also I think that here's the environment. At least speaking about the U.S. is the likelihood that you get a company to start at ground zero to come into the market and effectively start installing the products that you guys are involved in manufacturing is very low. What's much more likely is that you have well-established contractors who decide to open a division, right? Because they know they understand construction and it's sort of applicable too. So I like where your head is there, Stacy, as you're thinking about like who are the contractors that this makes the most natural sense to bolt on. It's glazing contractors, maybe it's masonry contractors, maybe it's steel, erectors, steel erectors, maybe it's roofing contractors, the people for whom these are, could be drywall contractors. They want to own the entire envelope.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a part of it. So it's a very obviously not just the envelope, right? But then the skin and the facade. But anyway, there's a lot of really interesting paths forward, and a lot of our audience, Nitin, fits into that designer and constructor, category. So as we're talking about this, maybe we've sparked some ideas for folks to try to explore and learn more. If they did want to learn more, if they wanted to get explore more what you're talking about, where would you direct them?
Yeah. So maybe I'll just kind of cover one question which Tom is asking about energy codes. What I would like to say here is that yes, when we are working with the designers, and the designers, they have their own now energy consultants or energy consultants who help them when they're working on a building. So we are able to provide whatever they need in terms of product data or full material submittal, which also says we may have a green guard certificate, we may have other certification to talk about that, because when they are making a building, they have to integrate many elements. So being one of the materials, we are able to provide all the elements which can fit into their overall codes. And there sometimes we are also able to support in the design of the right kind of material, because they may say they want a certain U value which should be below this. They want a thermal value which would be below this. So then we come back to them to say, if you use this material or this kind of fabric, this is what you can get. And then they put it, their energy consultant would put all the elements from different materials and come up with the energy requirement of that building. So this is one way it supports, and membrane really play a very positive role generally compared to other materials. Now, coming back to your point, Chad, yes, I mean, if they want to know, I mean, obviously it's classically our website, which is www.sergeferrari.com, where you will see all the information on different kinds of material. But then if they want to know a little bit deeper, then obviously they can write to me through you, or they can write to me at nitin.govila@sergeferrari.com, and I can then provide them more technical information or presentation related to one element. Like we have something which is specifically devoted for acoustics. We have something which is specifically devoted to facades. Then similarly, for how do you manage the solar element of a building through interior and exterior screens. So similarly for the exterior buildings. So all that we can always provide that and support, and we have people locally in every country. They can obviously come and meet you or anyone, and then depending on the information, then we can provide good support from our product management, which is based out of France, if it goes to another level, and through our R&D and everything. So we have a lot of experience in that to work together, or even play a role of a guide or a kind of a consultant if they're looking for some guidance or advice on certain things.
Nice. Thank you. That's great. And as I say, hopefully you've sparked some interest. For those of us who are for those who are listening instead of viewing, because I just popped the name across the bottom of the screen. But if you're listening, Serge Ferrari is SERGE, Ferrari like the car.com. So SergeFerrari.com. Thank you so much, Nitin. We really appreciate you joining today. Learned a lot.
Yeah.
Excited about the future of what technical textiles can bring to the industry. So thanks. Stacey, anything before we let Nitin go?
No, thanks. It was so nice to meet you, and have a great rest of your day.
Night.
Thanks
It's
a lot.
almost over.
That's what I meant.
And I hope, Chad, I have not given you a tongue twister, actually, but in terms of technical textiles. But yes, thanks a lot for having me over, Chad and Stacey. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And if it can be useful for anyone, I'll be really more than happy to support or be ready for them if any questions they may have.
That's
Thanks.
great.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day. Yeah.
You too. Thank you. Stacey, let's button this thing up and talk a little bit about next week. I forgot how much energy this gives me, and I missed it in my life. I really love getting to know new people and talking to them about what they're passionate about, and when they really know their stuff, like today's guest, it does get me fired up. So I thank you again for setting up our guest list.
We have such an incredible season. So let's just run down who we have for August.
Yeah.
You're joining us. I'm interviewing you, which I'm
I can't
nervous
wait.
about.
I'm going to be a guest.
I'm not the best interviewer, but we'll see how that goes.
Between you and Tom, you'll do great. And let's
Yeah.
be honest, like
Yep.
you could just pretty much pull a string and I start talking, right? So
Yeah, that's you'll be an easy guess.
Yeah.
But you'll be talking about how to lead change in an organization, which is a great topic for you. And I've seen you speak, and incredible speaker. So that's next week. And then we have Scott Pepper talking about cash flow, unique cycles of cash flow, followed by we're talking to another overseas. I have been talking to, I don't want to mispronounce his name, Stepan.
Stepan, that's it. Yeah.
He's been really keeping up with AI. I've been talking to him for months now. He, all different from specs to design. It's really, really interesting. So definitely.
Yeah, this is a guy who's literally like made it his unofficial job to just follow literally every AI development and construction. And he's just had thousands and hundreds of thousands of people follow him and engage with what he's doing because he's committing so much of his own time and energy to it. I think we're very lucky to have him on.
Yeah, somebody has to keep up with this stuff. So
yeah, no doubt.
And then finally, we're talking about PP designed for women. We've touched on this before, but we're talking more about the clothing, I think, this time. And if you tune in for this one, you get 20% off. So if you have any woman in your organization and you need PPE, definitely tune in. That's the last episode of August. So you'll get 20% off for that episode.
Awesome. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So that's August, and we'll also be loaded through October and November, and we do have all of our guests nailed down, and are excited for what's to come. So thank you so much. We'll see everyone next week, 9 a.m. Eastern, live on LinkedIn and/or YouTube. And if you aren't able to catch it live, please, as always, jump on to YouTube, watch that recording, LinkedIn, watch that recording, or what has fast become our most popular consumption way to take in the show is on Apple or Spotify podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Have a great one. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Stacy.
See ya.
See ya.